Well, it has been a little bit, but we finally got some updates on DC Studios' plans for the upcoming Lantern series. We now know when and where the new series is going to shoot, and some of the plans for one of the main characters. So we're going to take a couple minutes to dive into this report, check out who it comes from, and what this could mean for the Lanterns moving forward. Now, last month, the news broke that DC Studios' Lanterns had been given an 8-episode straight-to-series order from HBO. Now, this means it's no longer a Max streaming exclusive, and it seems like at this point that the Green Lantern reboot we've spent over a decade waiting for is finally about to happen. Technically, I think this is a reboot of a reboot, but we won't dive down that rabbit hole just yet. Now, we do know that Chris Mundy, who brought us True Detectives Night Country, is serving as the showrunner and executive producer, and he'll write Lanterns with Damon Lindelof, who wrote Watchmen and Lost, and comic book great Tom King. Now, the show has had, multiple faces, but for those of you that don't know, the DC Studios Lantern show is going to follow a new recruit, John Stewart, and his legendary partner, Hal Jordan. Now, these two will be drawn into a really dark and Earth-based mystery as they investigate a murder in the American heartland. Now, this gives it a pretty unique tone and take for a Green Lantern series. And honestly, being set in the American heartland was not something I was expecting, and probably will keep a little cap on that budget. Now, earlier today, the team over at Nexus Point News dropped a bit of an update on the series. Now, like we always like to say, Nexus Point News is not DC Studios or James Gunn, so we want to take it with a grain of salt, but as one of the new and rising sources, they've hit a couple of home runs, so I think this story is worth paying attention to. Now, according to them, production on this long-awaited show is going to begin in January of 2025 and should run all the way till June of that year. Now, based on that shooting schedule, this means we could possibly see the show by the end of 2025, but most likely early or mid-2026. Now, the site does go on to add that originally the series was set to shoot over in the UK, but now the whole cast and crew will be gearing up down in Atlanta, Georgia, where they did a lot of the Superman film. Now, the big questions about the show have been about casting for a little while, and they are reporting it's underway. Now, we do know the current idea is for Hal Jordan to be in his 40s, with John Stewart to be much younger, possibly in his early 30s. Now, that setup alone really gives me some interesting thoughts, and I can't help but wonder if some of the long or midterm plans are to turn, Hal Jordan into Parallax, but we're going to have to wait and see what happens in this series, because if that's happening, I'm sure some of the seeds will be sown. Now, regardless of all of that, the report does emphasize this, and I quote, "The role of Hal Jordan is intended to go to a noteworthy name. Casting on Hal Jordan is currently the priority, with casting John following it. It's likely this could be for potential chemistry reads for the duo." Now, the fact that they're going after a big name for Green Lantern, that does not surprise me at all, and there are a lot of names that pop right to the top of the list. I've heard a couple people kick around Channing Tatum, who just came to life recently in another superhero production. We won't spoil that, but the name everybody keeps coming back to is Glenn Powell, who quite honestly I could totally see as Hal Jordan. I think the Lantern series is going to be super important to DC, setting up the cosmic universe and the expanse of the Lantern mythology for future projects to build on, so getting this first series right and the first pieces and the most classic pieces out in front of fans is going to be the mission, and if they can pull this off, I think they set up their path for journeying the cosmos of the DC Universe in a really great way. How this detective story comes together in the American heartland and what villain the Lanterns are facing, we're going to have to wait and see.